It's time for the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash. Talking about indie comics. Oh yeah. Talking about indie comics. Oh yeah. It's time for the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash. It's time for the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash. Talking about indie comics. Oh yeah. Talking about indie comics. Oh yeah. It's time for the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash. It's time for 3, 2, 1. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another Unnamed Indie Comic Show featuring your host, Skip. That's my co-host, and me, Ash, talking about independent comics. And when my computer's not crashing, I'm sorry about that. For everyone that was here, I had the infamous Windows blue screen of death right as it was launching everything. And so we had a little bit of a delay. But if you're still here and with us, I thank you greatly for your patience. And it means a lot. It really does. And I hate to put people through that. It's my fault, sort of. I mean, it's my computer. I didn't tell it to do it. But Skip, apologies to you as well. Thank you for putting up with my shenanigans and my computer shenanigans. And thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, man. Yeah, I can't say it's your fault. I mean, your computer is your responsibility, but you definitely didn't tell your computer, like, hey, right when we're about to jump into starting the show, like right after I do that song, die. So I can't hold it against you too much. But I'm happy that we were able to get Old Faithful or Old Unreliable back online so we can come and talk about some indie comics.
Definitely. Whew, I'm all discombobulated now. It's funny because, you know, when this sort of thing happens, everyone's just kind of sitting and everything's like dead and it's like, but like behind the scenes, I'm like frantically trying to reboot stuff and launch programs and do it. And it's just like, I feel almost winded, even though I didn't do any physical activity, but it's just like the stress. You might hear it in my voice. Fortunately,
I'm sure as we progress through the show, that will drop away. So it's only temporary.
Yeah. Fortunately, got a nice beverage for tonight that I'm drinking, and it is pretty good. It is from a buddy of mine from church that I recently met. He's into beer. And he had me over at his house, and we had some beers and stuff. And we were talking about it, and he does this thing where he goes like a month without alcohol. So he called it Near November, I think is what he said. But so he has, and I was talking about like near beer. I don't know if you know what near beer is. But I'll imagine maybe someone in the audience does not know what near beer is. Basically, it's a non-alcoholic beer. And I was like, yeah, you know, I like near beer. Like, it's fine. Like, as long as it's good, I don't necessarily need to drink alcohol. I just like the taste. And so he had this, he gave me 2 different varieties of this, like small brew, like indie brew, like near beer. I was like, the only kind I know is like the big brands. You know, you can get like Coors makes a near beer. And I think Miller used to make one called Sharps. I don't know if they still do. Anyways. But he gave me this one called Two Roots Brewing Company, non-alcoholic. Yeah, it's a winner 2019 gold non-alcoholic beer category. Yeah, anyways, I just bored everyone to tears after that long wait so I could talk about near beer, but it's tasty. What are you drinking?
I have the finest Mickey D's sweet iced tea right now, or iced sweet tea, I should say. So I'm sipping on a little bit of that, hoping that the sugar rush carries me through without too many yawns, because excited as I am to talk about indie comics, I just got hit with a wave of like tiredness earlier today, and I was able to fight my way through most of it, and I ended up, giving into a little bit of a nap before we got started, so I charged up my energy reserves there. So I'm working on that. And also, while we're talking, not part of the discussion on the Unnamed Indie Comic Show, but I received some comics today in the mail and a record from my favorite band. And I'm actually opening that up while we're doing this.
What is your favorite band?
My favorite band is My Bloody Valentine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, showgaze group. So I found a vinyl of my favorite EP that they've done after they reprinted their like kind of seminal and highly influential album Loveless. So I was able to grab that, and then their very first official album that they did before Loveless through reprints, and I received those, and I was like, man, the only one that I'm missing is that I really, really want is their Glider EP. And I was able to get my hands. It just popped up out of nowhere too. I didn't even do like a saved search on eBay. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just grab a Glider CD because that's all that's ever on there. And sure enough, I went on there and someone was selling the Glider vinyl, and I was like, oh, time to screw my budget up. So
you're like, I just bought Ice Cream Man #1.
Dude, yeah, exactly. That was like right after, and I was like, I'm good with collecting for the rest of the year. Just gonna buy my normal comics.
Right.
No.
Now we know why, kids. Skip's getting into vinyl.
Exactly. While finally the vinyl indie comic came out, and we just may talk about that here shortly.
Oh, all right. Well, let's see. Speaking of shortly, let's go straight, I guess, to the new comics. Today is New Comic Book Day. It is officially December, so I now give everyone permission to sing their little Christmas jingles and put up their decorations and do all that stuff. Not that you need my permission, but that's one of my little pet peeves. I remember walking into Walmart at like mid-October this year, and they had Christmas decorations up, and I'm like, what? It's like 2 weeks to Halloween still. It just drives me nuts. I hate the over commercialization of it. So for me, it doesn't start until at least December. It's like, okay, finally I can get in the mood here.
Yeah, my birthday is December 23rd, so I already have a special vendetta out against the holiday that we know as.
You've been robbed your whole
Christmas. Life. Yes, I have.
Oh, man. I think kids who are born in December should have like a special celebration in June. Like they should get like a special day.
I'm not against that.
Like hey, but like when your birthday comes, we'll like give you a cake and sing happy birthday, but all your gifts, we're going to have a big celebration party and gifts in like June. And like kids know this, and you'll get, because they'll be fine because they're still going to get presents for Christmas. So it's not, it's not like they're already not getting ripped off. But that's what I would do if I were king of the world.
Ash, the more you talk, the more I'm willing to give you my vote for king of the world when you talk like that.
Yeah. So up on the screen, for those that can see if you're watching the live cast, we do record this live on YouTube first, but it is then put in a podcast format. So some of you could just be listening. It is also designed with the intent that you might be listening in the car or at work or whatever. So we try not to make it too visual. Anything that we're looking at, we'll try to describe. But it is YouTube. It'd be dumb just to have a black screen. So anyways, one of the things we do, we talk about the new books because it did come out, but we only talk about indie books. This up on the screen is a site called leagueofcomicgeeks.com. They also have an app, so you can use it either or, whatever your preference is. And it's a great tool. Skip and I both use it. It's got some social features on there. It's got ways to keep track of your books. You can set up virtual pull lists. some stores across the nation actually are connected to League of Comic Geeks. So you can manage your pull list directly through this site if you're one of those fortunate that does. That's pretty neat. It helps you see like what you're spending. There's all sorts of great things I'm not going to cover. But anyways, it's a neat thing. I like to see what books are coming out. And this is what came out this week. We have a total of 14 books up on the screen in order of the most popular as by users of this site. Skip, I did not get to the store today for reasons. But this is kind of like my virtual shelf here. What are you seeing? Anything stand out that you wanted to talk about?
Let's see. I got to my store, but I was only able to get to one of the books because I had a day full of video editing, video creation stuff. So, of course, Firepower jumps out. Definitely with it being the last episode or last issue that we're going to get until around April, I believe. So that's one that stands out. And though I dropped off of the series, but I do intend to go back and read it when more of the hardcovers come out. Deadly Class by Rick Remender there. I think this is the beginning of the last story arc before they sunset this bad boy. But what jumps out to you, Ash?
Well, of course, Firepower. Once in Future is making me kind of reconsider trying it out again. I read the first couple of issues way back when it first came out because I'm a big King Arthur fan. So anything Arthurian mythos, I'm like, oh, sign me up. I love Dan Mora's art. It's a beautiful book. And something about the way it was written just didn't sing with me. I was like, And I just moved on. I had back then, of course, I was still buying DC books, so I had plenty of stuff on my pull list. It was hard to give a book attention, but recently, Comixology had a massive Black Friday sale, and there's still a couple books that are on sale through the 2nd, which would be tomorrow. And one of those is Once in Future, and the first trade is like less than $1. And the second trade is like less than $2. And so I was like, oh, this is a really good deal. And maybe I didn't read enough because I only read the first couple issues. Maybe. So I'm thinking about giving this book a try and seeing, because my pull list is getting smaller and smaller as books get canceled or just run out because they weren't ever designed to be a long running series. So I'm looking for new applicants to fill the positions of these books. What else here? King of Spies is, man, I am all over this book except for one thing. I don't want miniseries. And that's unfortunate because that's all Mark Millar does these days. And I don't know what to do about it. I guess I'll just wait for the trade, but I'm trying to get this. There we go. Open a new tab. So The King of Spies is Mark Millar's new book, and it has art by Matteo Scalera, who I didn't really know much about, but he did the art for that White Knight, what's her name? Harley Quinn series.
Oh, did he? Okay, right on. I know him from Black Science with Rick Remender, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's a different look. So I was like, oh, I like this artist. I love Mark Millar. King of Spies. It says world's greatest secret agent has 6 months to live. Does he die quietly in a hospital bed, or does he make up for a lifetime of bad decisions? I'm like, oh, sign me up. I love this cover. But I'm sure it's like a 6-issue series, and I'm like, oh. So I'm probably gonna pick up the first book, but part of me is like, I should just wait for the trade. Anyways, regardless of what my decision ultimately is, this is a book I'm very excited about, and yeah, that's it there.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it, and it got me more interested in it, but I just have an aversion to Mark Millar. It's just really hard for me to buy into. This was the closest, and I was even at the shop, and I'm like, but Mateo is doing it. And then ultimately I was like, eh. So I ended up just grabbing I was gonna get Good Boy anyway, but I ended up grabbing like a cover A because my shop did a shop exclusive. So I was like, all right, well, it's already in my box, but I was like, I don't feel like paying $25 right now for our shop exclusive. I am gonna
Ooh.
support the shop, but I'm just gonna pay for the cover A so I get the story, and I'll grab one of those other ones later.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
I just picked up the A cover of Good Boy, so I'm hoping I haven't read it yet, but I'm hoping it's good because it looks cool.
Boy,
Yeah,
right.
see what you did there. Um, Firefly was a book I used to collect. It's cool. I kind of wish I still was. It was one of those things I had to get rid of because back then, again, I was buying so many DC books. And they were like twice a month and all this stuff. And I was like, my pull list is too huge. So I was like, I'm going to cut Firefly. And now I kind of wish I was still getting it because it wasn't a bad book. It just was an okay book. But I love that it's an ongoing. Congratulations, Boom Studios. You're on issue 34. You're pumping out the book, keeping it going. They've had spin-off books. So it's a good studio over there.
Absolutely.
We said, let's see, Epidoxa in the chat mentioned Spawn and the Me You Love in the Dark and Firepower, King of Spies, Dune, and the Friday trade paperback, which is not on this list because it actually came out a week or two ago. But
Right.
this is the last issue of the Dune House Atreides. I'm not a big fan of one of the authors, so I didn't ever read the books, but I'm very interested in reading these adaptations or adaptations. I think that's the correct way to say it.
Yep.
Simply because it's not the stories that I didn't like. I just didn't like the writing style, the prose. So this is going to be a different medium. Maybe I'll be able to enjoy that story without that. I'm a huge Dune fan, so I'm excited to read more. That movie left me hungry. Scrolling down, any more books? Another Mark Millar book there for you, there, Skip.
You know what? I think I need to go look over at okay, here we go. All right. So I do see one, Odin's Eye from Bad Idea Comics, as well as Last Resort X, whatever the rest of the title is, by Matt Kent. Both of those Bad Idea books did get pulled for me, and they were at the shop that I go to get my Bad Idea books, but I wasn't able to make the drive out there to get them because I got to go out to the Bay Area. So, yeah, I wasn't able to pick those up, but I cannot wait. I'm going to wait till the other batch of books that I got from Bad Idea 2 show up that were supposed to be released like a month ago. And Cross to Bear, I keep looking at that because I hear good things about it. I wanted to grab issue number 1. I didn't even realize issue number 2 was already out.
Yeah, I read the first issue of Cross to Bear, and it was interesting, but it wasn't what I was looking for, so I didn't pay much more attention to it. But you enjoyed it? You wanted to read more?
No, I didn't grab it. I kept eyeing it, and I would like find another book to end up getting instead.
Oh,
Like
I
same
see.
thing today. I was like, oh, let me check it out, and then I was like, oh wait, Hotel Volume 2 came out. Let me grab that. So,
Well, I see a Bad Idea book.
yeah, 2 of them. Those are the ones I
2.
just talked about.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, man, such a bad idea. What's this?
Right.
Archeron. Sir Edward Grey. Looks like a Hellboy homage cover. I haven't heard anything about this book. Lots of number ones, man. That's one thing I'm noticing is so many, like either number ones or like 2s or 3s, like just constantly new books coming out. It's like the hardest thing to follow. You know, these series is just, they're coming and going. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I didn't expect for there to be as many number ones to end the year as I'm seeing now, and I felt like I did a deeper search because most of the time I'll go, well, especially before there was all these constraints on materials and backed up printing queues, but I'd usually go like about 6 to 10 weeks out and like pick my books just so I didn't forget. And usually by that time, like if I forgot something or something else popped up, it wouldn't slip through the cracks because I'm already so far ahead. But a lot of these books must have popped up in between then and now, or maybe when I was going back before, they just didn't seem all that interesting to me, so I didn't mark them on my list.
Well, on the next page here, we got some more number ones. Animal Castle from Ablaze. Haven't heard anything about that. There's a book here that I gotta contact my store. I've been bad about this. King's Vengeance #1. There's something about the cover and that art and the concept that makes I want this book. And I can't really put my finger on like how to explain it. But let's see if I'll pull that up here. Here we go. A vexed warrior who was once a loving father and a husband is brought back to life 25 years later and proceeds to avenge himself on the demons responsible. From the creators of the Hit Scout series, Once Our Land, get this awesome new first issue. Of course, always get a first issue. And it's a writer-artist, singular writer-artist, which is something I'm always interested in because I think you can get some really good magic when you have a good artist who is also a writer. But I have a feeling my store is not going to have any of these. So I did not pre-order it, and I'm bummed.
Yeah, that is the one thing about some of these indies. You do have to make sure that you put the order in for them because, yeah, some shops, just aren't gonna take the chance. I'm surprised. Like the shop that I go to is kind of like in the hood, and I'm surprised at how many chances they take on indie books. Shout out to Josh at Comic Command Center for like just having some indies in there that I don't really think a lot of people ask for. But also, I will give them credit that they do a pretty good job of like remembering kind of what their customers are interested in, because they have told me about some indies that I wouldn't have taken a look at. And I was even surprised that some of them were reading them because most of the guys in the shop that I go to just like to read Batman.
Right. Seems like half the comic collectors want to just read Batman.
Yeah, I like literally one of the guys in there. I was just like, yeah, I was like, because I like to ask people like, hey man, like what do you read? Because maybe there is like a gem that I just didn't know about, and they got to parse through all these books and put them out. And he's like, oh man, honestly, I just get everything that's Batman that comes out every week. He's like, and I don't even always usually get to them, but I just love Batman, so I just buy everything that Batman's in. And I'm like, okay.
Well, there's another book on this here called Campisi, and I'm having some struggling internet here. Can't pull up site, or maybe it's the site's having a problem. It's Campisi, the Dragon Incident. I read the first issue of this. It's an Aftershock comic, and Aftershock is doing some pretty cool stuff. They're the ones that do that Chicken Devil book. This was a neat book. Like, I really find myself thinking about this book and wanting to read more. So I think I'm definitely going to try this out in the trade for sure. I think it's only a mini series. Again, that's my personal pet peeve. Some people don't care. Some people love. I talk to some people and they're like, "Oh man, that's the only reason I like comics is miniseries. I don't want to be investing in a ongoing." So everyone's got different opinions for sure, but this is an interesting mafia meets dragons. Like, it sounds dumb when you say it that way, but it's got a cool style. I don't know. Have you had a chance to check this book out at all?
I have not, but shout out to Ben, aka Bunkmaster B, who was in here, if not last show before last, and had as we were going through, had put in a good word about Campisi. And shout out to Aftershock. Oh, and there just and he shows up. Yeah, but shout out to Ben for talking about Campisi. It definitely put it on my radar. I'll probably will go back and trade or just go back and grab the floppies and find them because I'm one of those weird people who would actually, if I want to read the book, I'd actually rather just go back and get the floppies. I'm not a big trade person these
No?
days anymore. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, used to love trades, and now I'm like, "Oh, I just want all the floppies, or I'll just get it on digital, for like a really good deal if I find it.
Well, getting it in digital but that to me is kind of like getting in a trade. Like I think of it that way. And oftentimes that's what I actually mean when I say I'll pick it up and trade later. Is I'll pick up the digital trade later because I want to read it, but I'm not invested into it that I'm like, oh, I gotta collect this. There's some books that they that I love, they're near and dear, and I want to own them. Like for example, it's the books Descender and Ascender. I got into that series as Ascender was going, and I bought the hardcovers for Descender, and I'm gonna buy the hardcover for Ascender whenever it comes out. But I kind of want to go back and collect all the floppies because I really love that series, and there's a nostalgia to it, and it matters to me. So having a collection for that, it's kind of like how you collect Ice Cream Man and East to West. Like you get all the issues and the variants, and it's like you collect those because they're special to you. Sometimes it's just a book's a good story, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can't afford to get every comic that just has a decent story. So maybe Camp PC will work that magic. I don't know. Like I never thought ULTRAMEGA would do that, and now all of a sudden I'm this huge ULTRAMEGA fanboy, and I'm like, I gotta get it all. So you never know. But I like to check out new stuff, and Camp PC seemed dumb. I was like, what? It just sound like I was like, Camp PC? What the hell is that? And then it's like, oh, okay. When you read it, it makes all sense, and you're like, okay. And then it's interesting. It's just I like creative new things that I haven't run across before. Just new stories. Show me something I haven't seen.
Absolutely, that's kind of where I'm at with comics, especially right now. I just want to see something that I haven't seen, before. That's more interesting to me these days than all the stories from some of the characters from the big two that I, really enjoy those characters, but kind of felt like I've seen them in majority of the situation scenarios. I wait to hear if people say like, oh, this is really good. Like I haven't seen this before. But if people just say it's really good, I'm like, well, I want really good, and I haven't seen that before, as opposed to like really good. But at the same time, some of those people have not seen that stuff before, so no knock. Enjoy your comics.
Epidoxus says, I grab trades when I know that I'll need to share it. Nothing is better than sharing an excellent trade and having someone fall in love. Amen to that. That's cool. Amen to that.
I like that.
See here at the bottom of the list, a book I did not know came out today, and I'm very excited, Skip, because it is one of my favorite books that I am reading right now. It is Snow Angels by Jeff Lemire and Jacques. And it is awesome. I got friend of the show, RDV, into this book, and if it's not Spider-Man or Batman Beyond or something, he can be, or Red Sonja, he can be a picky person, but he got into this book and he's all into it too. This is a fantastic ride of a thriller. If you like, it's like a little bit of Terminator, a little bit of Mad Max, a little bit of Aliens, Jeff Lemire is pulling from all sorts of different sources to craft this story, and it begs lots of theory crafting as you're reading it, which I enjoyed doing, and some of the things I was proud to be right about. But this is the final issue, season 2, number 6. I hate the stupid season thing. It should just be called number 10, but whatever. These are available only on Comixology currently. They're Comixology originals, so I like to shout them out because a lot of people don't see them in the store. They're just out of sight, out of mind. I was never a Comixology originals fan. I was like, whatever, these books all look dumb, until this book came out and I tried it and I was like, holy tomatoes. This is fantastic. This is going to be coming out in a physical trade, I think, in February. For those who just hate digital, put your eye out on this. If you have read a Jeff Lemire book that you like, this is something to pay attention. I will probably almost certainly be picking this up in the trade. If it comes in hardcover, I'll be tickled pink. Like I love this book. So I just want to give that attention. If you guys don't have Comixology Unlimited, it's only $5.99 a month. Also something to consider that I only recently found out. The Comixology original titles are also all available for free for Amazon Prime members. A lot of people have Amazon Prime memberships. You just have to read it via Kindle instead of the Comixology. But if you go into the Kindle store, you can find all the Comixology original books, and they're all $0 to read on your Kindle. So consider that. I know some people have discovered that, and this is how I discovered it for the Scott Snyder books that are also coming out on Comixology Originals. You do not get access to the entire Comixology Unlimited library like you do with the membership, but there's a way. So, there you are. Did I miss the season 1 Snow Angels trade? No, it's February. So, I believe it's all going to be one book. It better be one book. If they break it into two, I have words with that, Jeff Lemire. Speaking of Comixology Originals, All Nighter is also on this page. Number 3 came out today. That is the new Chip Zdarsky book. So if you like vampires, I guess the premise is vampires using their powers to become heroes. So it's a new twist I haven't seen done.
Very nice.
Now, Skip, you mentioned a book that you wanted to speak more of. I can't remember what that was earlier.
Did I mention one?
You mentioned a book on the list, and you were like, "We'll say more about that later." And so I figured I can't remember what it was.
See, I see you in that general area. I can't. It's not ringing a bell now. See, scrolling down. Nah, I don't even remember what book I was talking about now.
You're getting old with me. All right.
I
am. Well, I want a book that I want to talk about. I think you might have read it, but it is
Maybe. Okay.
Fight Girls number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a chance to read this?
That. I have not yet. That was one of the books that my LCS did not get last week, so I picked it up today, and I did not get a chance to read it. But if you want to talk about it, say some things. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So this is a cool book. So it's another. We've talked about this book multiple show episodes now, because Skip and I are both reading this. This is a book that took me by complete surprise. I am not a fan of these covers, despite them being Frank Cho. Normally, I love Frank Cho covers, but I don't really like the construction of these. I feel they're kind of boring and uninteresting, and they just kind of look cheesy the way that the graphic layout. It's not that the art is bad per se, but it just didn't look like my cup of tea. But I tried it just because it was so weird. I was like, oh, I'll see what this is about. And then people started saying it was good, and I was like, oh, and sure enough, it was. I was really shocked. It was an easy page turner. Not because it was so gripping and the plot was so tight or whatever, but just because it was fun. I really found myself enjoying it. Seeing Frank Cho's art, which is of course gorgeous, and then this very light, action-oriented story, which was very suited for the comic medium. And I was kind of on board. And people were like, it's not it's just like Hunger Games or whatever. It's like, yes, we have seen that before. But I felt there was something more to it. Sure enough, by the second issue, Frank introduces a plot twist, if you will, like a little subplots that are going on behind the scenes and things like, oh, okay, there's more to the story. And it kind of that it like throws a hook in you, and you're like, okay, and that builds and builds with each consecutive issue while this competition is going on. So the competition lays the groundwork for great action scenes and getting to see scantily clad women do feats of athleticism that's just pretty to look at. And I say pretty to look at because at no point does this book ever come off as cheesecake, which I really appreciated. That's not my cup of tea. Yes, there are scantily clad women, but they're never drawn evocative. He's never puts them into like sexually alluring positions while they're fighting a crocodile or something, for example. Like, it's just, he plays it legit, and I really appreciated that. And the story came off better, in my opinion, for that reason. It felt like it added some legitimacy to what he was trying to do. Now, the subplot kept you with the actual like meat and potatoes, like, oh, what's going on, and kept you wanting to know more. And by this final issue, everything comes to a head, and I don't want to spoil anything, but if you read through issue 4, you're probably like, oh, how are they going to wrap this up in one more issue? And that is a bit of the problem with the book. And when I first closed it, I was like, wow, that felt kind of rushed. But the more I've been thinking about it, and I was talking to RDV behind the scenes, and he liked the book and everything, and was like, I kind of like actually how it went. This was never meant to be a deep book anyway. I shouldn't be expecting some big revelatory ending, It ended the way the book portrayed, as just a fun kind of story. And I can't say much about it without any spoilers, but the more I sat and thought about it and chewed on it, I was like, yeah, no, I'm kind of good. And I like that it opens itself up for potential sequels in a unique format. So I'm looking forward to you reading this, Skip, and I hope that you had as much fun with the series as I did.
I have been so far. I am looking forward to reading issue number 5. I might jump it up to the top of the stack tonight just so I can close it out. Me and the good sir Ben Uncles have started 4 Kids Walk into a Bank, and I'm behind now, so I got to catch up on that. But I think I'm gonna throw Fight Girls in there and just close that out, because I was really interested in how it was going to end. So here's to that.
Great. Well, that was my only shout out. I have not done as much reading this past week, with all the Thanksgiving holidays and then the mess of the books not being shipped. And then also with Black Friday, I picked up a new video game called Cyberpunk, and it's really stole my life away. That game is got way too much going on with it.
Yeah, I bought it when it was on sale for $10. Best Buy did a one-day only $10 fire sale on it, and it even came with like the 10 or it was some sort of, it might be a, I'm not sure. I called it a 10, but the like little additional metal cover that was all like variant designed and everything.
That's pretty neat.
And yeah, and all I ever got to was like starting to create my character. I never actually like jumped in and no, I played about 30 minutes of it like that, but yeah, getting through some of the first thing that you're assigned to and everything, and man, I have not gone back since. I have not played video games very much, and usually I'm like into video games in the winter. I don't know. Well, it's not fully winter yet, but still, it just feels weird to. And I love that game. I'm a big Cyberpunk fan, so I don't know why I'm not reading.
Well, if you're busy, I understand. This game is like, it's dense. There's a lot going on, and it's not an easy game to pick up. I really struggled for the first several hours into the game. I was like, I don't understand what I'm doing. This doesn't seem that fun. But I played many hours into the game before I even got to the title sequence. So I get to this part, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, Cyberpunk 2077. I was like, oh, now it's just starting. I'm like 10 hours into this game. But I'm enjoying it. Now I feel like, oh, now I know what I'm doing. Now this is kind of clicking. Before I was just like, this is just hard, and I'm just aimless, and I don't feel like it's disjointed. But yeah, I stuck with it, and Yeah, it's got great music. It's really got great atmosphere. That's what's sucking me into it.
Yeah, the atmosphere and the music and the sound design are incredible.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're not the Unnamed PlayStation show, so I guess we should move on to comics. But that's part of the reason why I haven't read as much. I have read some other books. Some of them weren't independents, and the independents that I read just weren't that great. So I didn't want to. I want to shout out books, not shout at them, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
You caught up on Gun Honey, or are you behind?
I'm caught up.
Oh, okay. So there's a book you've read.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on.
I got 2 under my belt.
All right. So we're going to be talking tonight, Skip. It's finally come. We're here. It's arrived. No thanks, no help, at least, from Diamond, but it finally came here. Decorum number 8. Originally scheduled, I believe, for March. Was this supposed to originally come out?
Either March or April.
I know that I had to go back to the previous issue and read and kind of catch up and remember where the story was. And there was an ad at the end saying, read this other book. So I forget whose book it was. Oh, it was the Silver Coin, issue number 1, debuting in April. And I'm like, Silver Coin's already on issue 6.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been a while. This book, we've done an episode on every single issue. It has been a favorite of ours. I have thoroughly enjoyed this book, well more than I thought I would. I really only picked it up because it was Jonathan Hickman, and it just came at the right time, and I gave it a try. And I have to say, I fell in love with this book. It's not something I would think would be my cup of tea on the outside, but when I tried it, I'm like, this is exactly what I want in comics. Like, not every comic to be this way. I think every comic needs to be its own flavor. But for this type of comic, for this type of story, a cerebral sci-fi, little bit of philosophical story with some adventure thrown in, like, I love the way Hickman does this. It doesn't have the same exact recipe as East of West, but the product feels similar in the way that it's delivered, and it feels like a signature Hickman book. Like, if I think of East of West being a signature Hickman, and I guess that's my barometer to decide what's a signature Hickman book. And I very much like this. So I'm glad that it came. I got a chance to read it, and Epidoxa in the chat says Huddleston flexed throughout these issues, and that's correct. He did. There were times where I was bitching and moaning about some of the art, especially in the early issues when I didn't really fully understand. But as we've gone through, Huddleston has completely won me over as an artist. What he's doing in this book, I'm not really familiar with all of his previous works, so I don't know if this is something that is normal for him or something he did here. But his utilization of the medium and how he borrows some tropes from the world of manga and the way that they tell stories and the way they express things, the way they convey thoughts and ideas on the page. There's definitely some signature things that if anyone who's read a manga goes, oh, I recognize that, he utilizes, but he does it in such a way that he's not just completely parroting a manga. Like, you don't open this book and go, oh, this is exactly like a manga. Like, it's not. It feels like a Western comic, but it's being like a hybrid. It's borrowing things that work well. And this is not a perfect book but it's a book that I can't speak highly enough about. It's really strange. It's a rare breed of book that can do that, where I can recognize as I'm going through and going, this feels like a flaw. This feels like a flaw, but I just don't care. I just, before we go into the details of the actual contents, Skip. What are your thoughts? Do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, it was interesting how it wrapped up overall, and there were some parts that if anybody's familiar with the Thinking Critical YouTube channel, and if anybody followed along while we were going through some of the Hawks and Pox stages, a good fellow over there by the name of Doc was made some jokes about Jonathan Hickman trying out some things that he wanted to do in X-Men and his indie series Decorum. I feel with this, I do feel like there is a little bit of a link between the two, especially with things regarding the phalanx that didn't end up being touched on in Hickman's time on the X-Men series. But aside from that, I started to expect it to go one way, and then when it wasn't going that way, I felt myself like, hold on, wait, is this not ending well? And then I was like, let go of your expectation of what you think the story should do and just keep the expectation of quality, and then take the ride on the story. And once I did that, I was like, okay. And I still had some criticisms of the book, but ultimately I felt at peace with where things left off. And then, of course, I was intrigued by the fact that there might be more.
Right. So, I'm going to let you take the reins about covering the interior of the book however you want, and we'll discuss the details of the story itself and give our final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. We jump right back into the book, and we're with Neha and the Celestial Messiah, and they're just eating some food. At this point in time, finally, some of the people from the Sisterhood of Assassins are starting to get a drop on their location and beginning to show up and, press Neha and the Celestial Messiah about, that sweet, sweet reward that's on their head. Actually, that's a scene within itself. Ash, as people begin to show up and we see where Neha is now versus when we met her at the beginning of the book, how did you feel with how what she did to take her stand, and how the Celestial Messiah began to, I guess, evolve?
I think it sets the stage for the book really well, especially given that this has been so long since we've had an issue. I thought the way it opened felt very much like you almost could jump in. This is not a book you can jump in on, but it felt like a book you could jump in on. It helped me get right back into the saddle and feel comfortable with the story because of that. I liked Neha's personality really gets to shine here. I like that Hickman... Sometimes one of my complaints about Hickman is that he can be very clinical in his writing style. And I want to say, like, I feel like he's trying to branch out, because it seems like his newer stuff is more this way, like his X-Men. Even as much as I complain about his X-Men run, he really tried to be more personable, especially if you read his New Mutants, it was like overboard. But if I read even like East to West, which I just love, there are parts that feel very clinical. Like it's almost like a robot writing humanity.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't know if Hickman, and I don't mean to say this in an insulting manner, but there are people amongst us that, they're on the spectrum. I know quite a few people this way, and they see the world differently. And it would not surprise me. I know nothing about Hickman, and I'm not trying to say this in any sort of critical way, but it wouldn't surprise me if Hickman was one of these people. They tend to be extremely brilliant people, but also people that don't really connect on the emotional level as well. And I think here it was really the personality of Neha was coming out, and I really liked the Celestial Messiah character. he's almost like my favorite character in this book. He was just fun.
Yeah, definitely. Celestial Messiah started giving me. I'm trying to think of Adam Warlock's name before he got the name Adam Warlock, but when he was very much like, like a man child, like, he had like, or like a god child, if you will. He had all these like abilities and stuff like that, but he was kind of a blank slate as far as like taking cues, social cues, and what is and isn't okay, and kind of had to learn those down the line. So I'm getting some of those vibes from the Celestial Messiah. I agree with you. As someone who's read almost every single book that Hickman has done, if not like finished that series, but at least started it, so I kind of got some vibes of what it's like. That seems to be and I really appreciate when writers don't just stick to what they're known for and try to push themselves into, not force themselves. There's a difference between like forcing and pushing, but kind of push themselves to get outside of their comfort zone. And I felt like Hickman definitely did some of that with his X-Men series. Whether some of it was for better or for worse, but especially in this series, I feel it. He's trying to show, like you said, more personality and less like I understand the principles of writing a story. I understand, like, I'm adept in what makes science fiction interesting, and I'm just going to continue to put, and as well as like skepticism and and kind of conspiracy theory. So I'm going to keep putting those combos together, at varying degrees to deliver stories that you people can seem to continue to like. With this one, he is kind of pushing himself more. There's more humor and whatnot in his writing, definitely more personality. I'm gonna drop some props to Nick Dragotta. I feel like him showing Hickman more manga and whatnot and introducing him to that kind of opened this up, because the manga vibes that we feel is not just in the look of the book, but also in some of the personality within Niha coming across as someone from that. So I want to give Dragotta some of his props. Dragotta also they did the Marvel method a lot. So Dragotta would like kind of take the reins and end up plotting it out, and then Hickman would go back and fill it with dialogue. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that he took from doing East of West and kind of brought it over here with Huddleston. So for me, that was part of what I was talking about. We got a healthy heaping of that early on, and it wasn't inconsistent because we've gotten that from Niha almost from the jump, but it took me a minute to adjust to getting so much of it in a concentrated way. And then once I kind of let myself relax and then I was like, okay, wow, I didn't think I was going to have like some fun or more fun, in this sci-fi, high concept Decorum book. So I think that was pretty cool. As we move over to the next section, so they were able to dispatch the first attempt from one of the people from the Sisterhood, and get themselves out of that situation and get to like a warehouse type thing. And sure enough, another one comes up. We got the Celestial Messiah starting to kind of tinker with some of the machinery that is in that warehouse building in the background, while Niha is dealing with the next person that's on their case. And right as a conversation was being had, Niha's trying to barter. There no more bartering is needed because the Celestial Messiah apparently is just evolving at rapid rates as far as his speech and ability, and he gets the machinery online, cannons locked at the person that was on the trail of Nihan, the Celestial Messiah, and they're able to get themselves a vehicle to get the hell out of Dodge. How did that come across for you, Ash, that scene?
Both of these scenes play off a little bit absurd to me, but in a good way. Like the absurdity, I thought added the flavor. When I first got in here, I'm like, wait a second. What, they're in a warehouse full of giant battle mechs. Just like, they're just like, oh, we'll just borrow some of these. Like, and I was like, yeah, that's something that would probably happen in a manga. Like you just would, we're not going to worry about the logistics of how all of this, it just happens. And I'm like, okay, just somehow this happened. I don't know the details. The plotting of this story is very simple. There's all of these assassin candidates or students that were being taught with Niha that hate her. And now that she's done this bad thing, like awaken the Celestial Messiah, everyone's been sent to go kill her. So we've seen this kind of thing before. But it's interesting, and each scene is one of the other students coming to kill her. And I really like how the Messiah almost seems to like predict the future, because they'll make a statement. Like in the previous scene, he says something like, why do you have sticks for eyes, or something like that. And I don't know why, but it translated just right for me. So I completely understood. I was like, oh my God, Niha is going to stab her through the eyes with chopsticks. And she ends up doing it. And that's sticks for eyes. And I was like, oh, he can see the future. Like, that was how I was processing it at the time. And then later it became more clear what was really happening. But I do like seeing the evolution, because he's born without half of his head. And he starts off like this imbecile. And Niha is like admiring his body because he's a male adult, but he's just a complete doofus. But as you learn through the story, he's more of was a mind of an infant, and he's like goo goo gag. Like infants aren't necessarily not intelligent. They just don't have any framework to base anything off of. They haven't been able to formulate the education to utilize, and we find out the Celestial Messiah is very much like a rapidly developing infant. But you also skipped over one thing. I want to rewind a little bit. This beautiful 2-page spread. When we talk about Huddleston flexing his muscles here, I think this is going to become my new wallpaper. And I can't, unfortunately, show anyone who's listening to this on the podcast, but hopefully if you're listening, you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. It's a big cityscape, and the detail, you can blow this thing up and zoom in, and it is just so much detail. So when I look at pages and I'm like, man, some of the art looks like chicken scratch. And then I remember, oh, it's because he probably spent days doing this page right here. This is all worth it. And again, I keep going back to the anime. This is a thing that sometimes you do in anime. You do a lot of really simple drawing when it's not, the detail's not needed, and then you focus the detail when it is needed. And that's something that I appreciate in this book. Just like here in the mechs, like when you want to get a good look at the mechs, it's all rendered and highly detailed art and colored. And then the scenes around it, when it's just someone talking to someone or someone pointing at something, it's just a quickly drawn sketch that helps the artist actually keep deadlines and not have to wait. This book did come out 6 months late, so never mind. I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty cool, funny scene when all the mechs are now reprogrammed and Crab Guy has to give over the keys to his starship. It played off kind of funny. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoy the scene. Yeah, definitely. Again, more manga influence, like building full of mechs and all that stuff, like we talked about. It was nice to see the progression of the Celestial Messiah. We had so much time, with like guarding who he is and whose hands he may fall into and where he may go. And there is a theme that we see through here as far as with innocence mixed with goodness at the core, but imperfection within the world, and how that recipe can end up being a good thing. But we'll get to more of that here in a bit. So since they were able to get themselves a ship and get off of that planet, they are flying high in the friendly skies. This gives Niha an opportunity to start to ask the Celestial Messiah about, its ability to, rapidly kind of evolve, and he's able to have an intelligible conversation back. But in the midst of that, another person catches wind of them as they are, boogieing out of what they thought was going to be the only bit of danger that they were immediately in, and they crash land on the planet. And sure enough, we got another face off, and some shots fired as the gun was being aimed at Niha. Instead, the person said, "Hey, the bounty is for dead or alive." So we think that they take out the most lethal of the two, with the Celestial Messiah obviously being very capable. And once Niha sees that, takes it as an opportunity to strike. Fight goes back and forth, and Niha actually gets in a tight spot, and just as she thinks that it's all over, blam, looky who it is. Madame Morley, Imogen Morley, shows up and saves the day. But at the same time, of course, there's a conflict, as she is dedicated to the sisterhood of assassins, especially with her high ranking. There's a conflict between her and Niha, and as they're going back and forth, the Celestial Messiah puts itself back together and says, "Hey, there might be another way here." And that's kind of where we stop. And then we get to a white page. But Ash, of course, with that whole drama that played out, what did you take away from that scene?
Well, there was the moment when the Celestial Messiah gets blasted. I was like, "Oh no, where's this going?" Like, it was one of those things where I was like, "This is unforeseen." Like, we just went through all this, and now he's wasted. But sure enough, of course, there's more than meets the eye. But you get this gruesome pic here where whatever she blasted him with, like, rips him in half, and you can see like is half of his body on the top frame there. We get a little bit of a brutal fight, and like you said, the Imogen shows up and saves the day, and Niha's happy. And there's a kind of like a nice mother-daughter feel there. I feel like Niha is the daughter that Imogen never had, type of thing, and it's kind of broken in her humanity. She's been this kind of stone cold killer who has removed all emotion so she can be who she is, and Niha's kind of gotten to her, and I kind of like to see that. Like, I like when I see characters change other characters. I think that makes for interesting story. And again, the Celestial Messiah character, he constantly is keeping me going like, what the hell? Like, and he wakes up and they're like, they're not sure what to do, and then he's like, I got an idea. It's just he's comic relief, but he's interesting at the same time. So Imogen wants to kill him, and he's like, but I have a reason probably why you shouldn't. It's just he's the catalyst for how this whole issue is driven, is based on his ideas and what his view of the world is, I guess. And then you didn't cover this yet, but you're about to. It kicks over. He's like, I got this idea. And then I've been a big complainer in the past about these white pages that Hickman so loves to use in his books. But in Decorum, well, I did complain in the first issue when he did a whole thing about ramen soup. But the way that he's been using him for the most part in Decorum has been very, very not powerful, very effective. I've really appreciated it because, yes, one could make an argument of like, you don't tell, show, and all the stuff that gets communicated in these pages could be shown in a story, and then it might be a 50-issue story, which not necessarily a bad thing. That was East to West was almost 50 issues. Mm-hmm. But if you're intending only to do an 8-issue story, you don't have that framework. Here's a bridge, and it does it effectively. And I just like, this is one of my favorite white pages that he's ever done. Are you a Celestial Messiah? Yes or no? And it just, and I love the flow chart, and then the picture of the Messiah, and he's got the glasses. He just looks like he's got this shit-eating grin, and he's just like with a little stick pointing at the chart. And this is all conveying from the previous page, when Imogen is saying, can you give me one good reason why I shouldn't? And Niha's pleading with him, like don't kill him, because that's what she's gonna kill him because she has to. It's like her job. And then he's like, but I can give you a reason. And then that's the flow chart. And I laughed out loud when I flipped the page and saw this. It's like, so what do you think?
Yeah, these are the rewards that writers can get if they push themselves and they put in the effort and they're not afraid to make mistakes and maybe things don't land so well, because chances are it's not going to work great the first time around, and hopefully you got an editor that you trust, especially if it's an indie book, that could say, hey, I see what you're going for, what about trying it this way? So I feel like all those things came together, and to me, Hickman isn't the best at telling a joke, but he does get humor. Even when he was on Twitter for a while, like you got to see a bit of his, kind of personality and his humorous side. So his humor is there, where maybe the anecdote quality within jokes that really make them land well is not there. Maybe he's still building it, but things like this, and then you pair it with his ability to do graphic design, and you put all those things together, and put Mike Huddleston in the mix, and it's like, hey, yeah, we go from a scene where he's like, hey, this might be a reason why, and then we flip the page and it's got this flow chart, and he's like, why don't you go ahead and take a look at this? Are you a celestial messiah? Basically, it's like, well, if you're not, we have no hope, and if you are, we have a chance. Are you? You're not. I happen to be, so I'm your only shot, and then we go from there. So I appreciated that about the scene. I think you already touched on the whole mother qualities of Madame Morley, and Niha and whatnot, especially it being that much more important since Niha's family is like in cryostasis. These moments probably mean quite a bit to her because she doesn't have anybody else, in the world kind of showing her this type of care and concern, guidance and direction. So it means a lot.
Yeah, and one thing that's important, if you guys, when you're reading this, I didn't catch this right away, but the whole "Are you a celestial messiah?" I'm convinced that this is basically posing the question to Imogen and Niha. They're basically like, almost you could read it as, "Am I the celestial messiah? Yes, no," because he's trying to make an argument of like why they shouldn't kill him. Right. And it's like, well, if I'm not, well, then, blah, blah. If I am. And of course, by the get to the very end of the flow chart, it's like, yeah, like what you just said, he's their only hope. Like shooting him would be pointless because everything's going to go south anyway. So it's just, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. All right. So from there, we get back over, and it's been a while. So I forgot the head lady's name over at the Sisterhood of the Assassins, but she gets a call. It's Madame Morley, and just checking in like, hey, look what I got. I got a celestial messiah. And you don't really have to worry about Niha anymore because she's dead, and that didn't fly over at all. It is pointed out that like she ain't dead. I can see her chest breathing. Of course, Niha gets up and then is like, oh, me acting like I was dead started to make me have a panic attack, actually thinking I was dead. So I started breathing again. Sorry about that. Anyway, this stuff that looks like blood, it tastes pretty good. And but yet and still, Madame Morley is able to get a word in and pretty much say, hey, well, we do have the Celestial Messiah, and everybody's alive in all reality, but I got some new news, and we could play this one of two ways. So are you feeling lucky, punk? Are you? And so she breaks down the plan that Celestial Messiah had after him doing the flow chart of why they should stop trying to kill him, because he probably wouldn't have died anyway. But it would have been a waste of time. And so the leader of the sisterhood, kind of poses a rhetorical question and pretty much says she's on board. And they're like, how in the hell are you going to make this work? And yeah, the Celestial Messiah pretty much lets them know, like, hey, this is the plan, and I broke it down for you, and I I tell you assuredly that this will go through successfully. And then we will stop there because next they got to put the plan in action. Ash, make sense of this stuff. How did it hit you?
Well, we hit another white page. This all hit me. This was the strongest single part of the manga influence that I felt. When they're trying to trick the leader of I forget her name too. They're trying to trick her that Niha's dead, and we just see this like bloody corpse on the ship. And at this point, you as a reader are not clued in, so you could like, whoa, why is Niha dead? I can't believe that can't be right. And then you just see the facial expression, and this is completely ripped out of manga style, like the way a manga would handle, and is seeing the lines. I forget what those are called. There's a term for it, the way those lines surrounding her head, and she's shouting, "I can see she's breathing," like you idiots, and to the hold up your fingers and be like, well, that little shit-eating grin, like this is right out of anime manga. It's a style of how they do things, and especially to the point that it snaps back to the drama. That's one thing that the Japanese do quite a bit. It was like have a drama, and then all of a sudden this crazy, whacked out, absurd moment where a character freaks out and they draw the cartoony face, and then back to the drama, just like without missing a beat. And This book does that, and that's what really makes it hit home for me on that. I don't think it overdoes it. It was surprising at first because the previous issues weren't quite as heavy, but I got on board with it. I just really, I was like you. I was like, you know what? Put my expectations at the door. Take it for what it is. Am I enjoying it? And I really was. And like I said, I was just captivated with this Messiah character, because this is kind of what I said the show, but the series has been built about. Is this, he's this egg, and this has been this mystery around him, and now here he is, and I'm just so curious, like where this is going, and knowing it's the last issue. So I'm fully on board.
Yeah, absolutely. To see, I think they were calling her Great Lady before. I forget her actual name, but the leader of the sisterhood, the Great Lady, to see how their relationship that they had, we watched it play out earlier in the issues, and then to come back around now, and even at one point in time, remember they were like at each other's throats. They were getting ready to like throw down and fight each other. She was about to grab that big blade and go right at Imogen Morley, but ended up not doing it because of the respect that she had for her, and that respect is not lost. That is the thing that allowed them to be a part of the solution. Is even when Madame Morley, who usually does not break away from what is asked of her and the standards of the sisterhood, she has really only done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
One, in both cases, it's been for Niha. One, to bring Niha in, and make her a part of give her an opportunity to make her part of the sisterhood, and even when nobody else believed in her, and then two, to trust her and the Celestial Messiah, to be figure all of this out and not just kill them and take the money from Rochi. So, and again, like I said, since the Great Lady has that much respect for Madame Morley, and how in a sense lawful, but I guess really loyal she had been to the sisterhood up until that point, that was a pivotal part of the grand plan, having the ability to roll out. So yeah, it played into it. All right. Well, and then past that part, so now it's time for some action. So they put the plan in action. We are told that the plan worked, and we see the art style switch. They are going right at the Church of the Singularity, going straight for Chi. Battle commences, of course, Chi being God status and having all of these other beings, at his disposal. He throws all of them at the sisterhood, and we see them have some success, take some losses, take some serious losses, and in the heat of the battle, we do see the Great Lady goes down, being beheaded or sword broken, and Chiro Chi, holding it up, proclaiming, that this mighty one fell, and the rest of you are soon after. And in the heat of the battle, of course, Madame Morley and Niha begin to ask, like, you said the plan would work, but part of the plan wasn't us making it out alive, was it? And Celestial Messiah is kind of pretty much like, yeah, you finally figured that out, right? And then he's like, nah, but for real, like, y'all are good. Like, y'all got me to the point that I needed to. I'm going to go ahead and kind of, take on Chiro from here. So if y'all just want to kind of keep, playing Space Invaders and knocking out his henchmen, I'm going to go ahead and get inside of there. I'm going to get to the God AI. If I can get past Chiro Chi, I'm going to go ahead and start reprogramming that thing and get past it. So sure enough, he gets to Chiro. They have their battle. Chiro seems to land a mighty blow, and the Celestial Messiah literally goes to pieces. But with his might that we see is building, and almost to see him in his final form, pulling himself back together, accessing power that we had not seen before. He's able to crunch Chiro Chi into more jagged bits than he was already constructed to be in. He gets, the Celestial Messiah gets to the God AI and is able to install a new programming to kind of reboot it and then set it on a slightly different course. And once he comes out of that area, he sees that Madame Morley and Niha are still standing. He was able to shut down all the other basically henchmen that was coming at them with the beginning of the reprogramming of the God AI. As Madame Morley and the Celestial Messiah are conversing and kind of making sense of what had happened and what things might look like in the future, the conversation comes up of like, okay, well, who's going to be the one to kind of influence the God AI and, and put in a good programming that will lead to, the world having a better shot, more balance than, what was in there when Chiro, was kind of put as the steward of it. And Niha is in the background, just like celebrating, kicking like heads over, and like breaking bits apart of these henchmen that are no longer going. She is cheering, she is fist pumping. I mean, she's just living it up. And they both look kind of over at her, and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it." And they look at Niha as that solution. Yeah, actually, before we conclude, Ash, just that part right there. How did the kind of the final battle, the realization of what the plan actually was, and then how things were resolved? How did that play out for you?
At first it was a little weird because I felt like it was really rushed, and I'm like, why you're going through all the good climactic finale, but after completing the story, I kind of was able to look back with hindsight and see the bigger picture. And the story is not about a big climactic battle. The story is about, first of all, kind of, it's hard to even like put into words, but there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of analogy or metaphor that Hickman's trying to do, that in this world, the god of this world was created by man, right? Because this is, and he was doing a lot of that with House of X and Powers of X, right? With the whole phalanx and the idea that machine eventually will take over, right? Because they will eclipse man, but machine was created by man. And so he's trying to tell this concept here. And it's, God, I'm stuttering over my words because I feel like it's hard enough to just grasp. It's 10 times as hard to try to put what I think I understand into words. But as I'm going through it over again with you, I'm seeing that the bigger picture really is about where the characters go, not like, oh, they won a big battle. This isn't Star Wars that we're reading here. This was,
Right.
it's kind of existential, and I hate using that because it makes it sound all pretentious and stuff, but this story is not really pretentious. This story, and I kind of, now saying this out loud, I feel like I appreciate the book even more for its kind of cartooniness. And we can see here on this page that you were describing where Madame Morley is talking with the Messiah about, what are we going to do now? And the Messiah's like, it can't be me that takes over because I failed the first time. We need someone else. And then she's, so it can't be me. And the whole time as they're having this discussion, you see this sort of like cartoony imagery of a shadow, the silhouette of Neha breaking stuff with sticks, just smashing things and being like a crazy kid. And she's like cheering, woo, like all just crazy. Like, and it's right out of a shonen anime. If you've seen any,
yeah,
like, and then perfect to the beat, she stops and turns and is like, what are you guys looking at? Like, because she missed the whole conversation, and it's clear to the reader that she's sort of the next herald or the leader of this new church or whatever, that they're going to put her. And I feel like the lighthearted nature of the way that Hickman tells this and some of that absurdity and goofiness does help ease. This book really could have come across pretentious and heavy. And maybe that has to do with, like you said, with a good editor throwing in some suggestions and some points of view. Maybe it has to do with Nick Dragata, in shaping Hickman's view of things and being like, hey, here's different ways you can tell stories, and look how these got, it all worked for me. It was silly, but it never was like, man, when he tried doing this with New Mutants, it fell really flat to me. It did not work. But this, I feel like it worked. And I feel like it was a neat, almost like a fairy tale that he told. This is kind of almost the way Hickman would tell a Disney princess story.
That's, it's so funny because that's exactly what I feel like it is. Ash, I don't think that there is really a better way to describe ultimately what this story ended up being. This is Jonathan Hickman's version of like a fantastical fairy tale, like princess fairy tale, like this is Cinderella, the Jonathan Hickman version.
Right.
Like this, rags to riches, this is it. The only thing is, I guess Prince Charming in this particular case is Madame Morley, and it's more of a, like we talked about, maternal relationship than it is a romantic relationship. But you're absolutely right. I can attest that. Well, again, since I didn't finish The Dead and the Dying, I didn't finish the Manhattan Projects, and I didn't get to Transhuman by Jonathan Hickman, so I don't know how those end. Black Monday Murders has not ended yet, but I also can't see that book having a happy ending. But all the other stories that he's written, with the exception of, and I'm even including his Marvel stuff, so with the exception of his Fantastic Four run, nothing, even when things ended optimistic, none of them ended happy. This is the first one. This is the second one, I will say, like the first one being East of West. And even that was, I would say it ended happy / hopeful, but this is the first one that really ended like on an even more positive note. So I'm seeing like Hickman try that out. He tends to usually be like a bittersweet kind of guy, or, like these people had to go through hell, not even necessarily always to get to heaven, but they had to go through hell so they didn't end up staying in hell. That tends to be what he does in most stories, and especially with his Marvel stuff, and then like his indie stuff, it would usually just not have a happy ending. It would have like a very cynical ending. But this one was like a happy ending. There was more joy in this than I've seen in. Yeah, I mean, even with how East of West ended, which I was very pleased with, it wasn't exactly. It was a happier ending, but I wouldn't call it a happy ending. This one was a happy ending. So yeah, definitely.
Let's get to the ending here, and we can finish because I think we have a few more pages to go.
Yep, actually, really just one. Well, I mean, well, technically two if we count the very last page, which is kind of like a transitional one. But a coronation, it says. So I know that you're wondering. So did everything really work out? Yeah, it did. It did. And as I am shocked as anyone, I got everything I wanted. I mean, every single thing. So I guess that's it then. Good night. So long. Take a hike, or not. And then, so as Neha is narrating those parts, we go over to the other page and it says to be continued. And we see her, Madame Morley, some of the leftover henchmen, if you will, or robots from the Church of the Singularity. We see the old Mantis character that we got to introduce to earlier on in the first, I think in the very first issue, or the first few, the first like 3 issues of the book. We see one of the sisters who was part of the future sisterhood who was trying to protect the egg of the Celestial Messiah. We see Neha's family who was in cryostasis, now out. The young boy sitting next to the Celestial Messiah, and Madame Morley there right behind her as Neha is sitting on the throne. It looks like since she has the sword of the former Great Lady, she is now the Great Lady of the Sisterhood, and it says that it will be continued in Decorum and the Womanly Art of Empire. And we Neha winking at us, and the hardcover's coming out on December 29th. So, Ash, happy ending or nah?
I guess it just like it was that in the book. It all depends on your point of view. Is the galaxy really in a better place with Neha running things?
Well, I would say in my personal opinion, it's in a better place than it was when when Chi had so much power. But that's only, again, from this perspective. I think the story has to play out a little bit more to see. But they did set it up that, since she is not such a, basically a few things. One, she's not as jaded as Madame Morley is at this point. And Madame Morley isn't a sour character, but, as she said, she basically said in so many words, like, I don't have the energy and I don't know if I have the temperament, to do that. And of course, the Celestial Messiah said, hey, I already tried once and failed. It didn't work out very good. And when they were highlighting all of the things that they need, obviously, those are all things that Neha possessed. Of course, being more youthful, having more energy, being more upbeat and optimistic, and kind of having that childlike wonder. I wouldn't straight call it ignorance, but I would call it that naivete, to not allow what has stopped her before to say this isn't possible, we can't do this, or allow her to be so closed-minded. So all of those qualities does put one in a position to possibly do a better job than the predecessors, because they won't be so held back by the kind of past mistakes, failings, and sourness, if you will.
Now, one thing I'm missing too is we don't see Neha's. What happened to Neha's parents?
They're on that page. The old lady, and then her younger brother sitting next to the Celestial Messiah.
Oh, that's her younger. Okay, that makes more sense now. I wasn't quite sure. Okay, good. I see. This is. I'm glad we talk about this, because I was like, because that was her personal motivation. Remember, of why she even became the assassin, was she needed to free her parents and brother. So so we got to see that. I think it is ultimately from a writing standpoint, this is absolutely a happy ending. like I said, if we take this in the view of a Disney fairy tale, right? The Cinderella had lived happily. We like to believe Cinderella lived happily ever after. It's a matter of how cynical you are. Does Cinderella marry the prince, and then the prince becomes a despotic ruler, and they just, like we don't really. Well, I guess Hickman is going to go further, so I'm very curious. The womanly art of empire. I don't think of the word empire as like a good thing typically. So it's a curious choice of words there. I think Niha's a fun character. I think she means well. Can she shape an entire religion? I guess we'll see. I definitely did have fun with this. So 8 issues. The art really, really, really grew on me. And I am now a huge Huddleston fan, at least of this style. I don't know if he draws differently for other books, but I loved what he did in this book. I will 100% be on board with a sequel, unless he switches artists, which I would be like, what? But if he gets Huddleston to do a sequel, 100%. I did not want this to end.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I did want it to end because I was just so curious how the plane was going to be landed. But if they had decided to forego that and give us more time in this world with all of these characters, I definitely would have taken it, because I think earlier on, as a community, when we were more interested in this book, it was so high concept to start out. I think we were all very much interested in the intrigue, probably more than the characters themselves. But an interesting thing happened, and I haven't seen this happen very often with books that are so few in issues, where the writer kind of pivots and shifts away from, like, within themselves as a writer, like, hey, I started it here, but internally they have this shift where it's like, you know what, actually I'm gonna lean into these characters a little bit. Maybe I created better characters than I thought. I know I'm like a big idea kind of plot kind of person, but I'm gonna make this a little more character driven than even I thought, and it working out, so well, in my personal opinion. So yeah, like Undead Quinn said, I gave the run a 3.5, not perfect, but okay. I felt like it was better than okay. I respect that. I felt like it was better than okay. I feel like it was really, really good. Definitely not perfect. I personally would have liked to seen a little bit more tension when it did come to the Celestial Messiah showdown. But at the same time, I wasn't disappointed in it. Like, it was more of a preference than a requirement, in my personal opinion. And of course, with the art being so dang good and so fantastical, just honestly really seeing what the Celestial Messiah was capable of was like, that was awe-inspiring enough. I was like, whoa, look at this dude and look at like what he is doing. This is crazy. So for me, I really enjoyed living in the world. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought I was just gonna come away liking Madame Morley, but I ended up, really getting behind Niha more than I thought I would. The Great Lady, I forget her actual name, but she was interesting, and even the people that Niha ended up, getting trained along with, like all of those assassins and how different they were, and some of them speaking different languages, and some of the humor of one of them being super murderous, and just like every time Niha tried to do something, like I'm gonna murder you in your sleep, skin you, like all of that stuff just like worked. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like
I was along for the ride, like the imagination. What's the word I'm thinking? Anyways, how imaginative this story was helped really sell it for me. The characterization, 100% agree with everything you said. It's one of the big reasons I loved East of West so much, was because I fell in love with these characters, even if characters I hated, God, who was like the main bad guy? One of your favorite characters. One of the
And
chosen. In East of West, the chosen.
That was Archibald.
Archibald.
Yeah.
Gosh, he was a character that was just like so juicy. Just loved to hate him. He was just such a brilliant villain. Yeah, that book was just overflowing with characters I loved. This obviously is a much smaller scope, being only in 8 issues, doesn't have as much chance to do, but same type of thing. Once he got to flesh these characters, like Neha develops towards the end of the series, and she's not just an annoying brat. I was like, oh, I really like this character, and that's why I said like I didn't. The reason I'm saying I don't want it to end is because I'm like just now like really enjoying these characters, and I'm like, oh, I want more adventures. I'm glad that this story wrapped up, but I'm wanting now like more stories, if they're needed, which it clearly sounds like he's had plans for more, which is why we're going to be getting more. But the weirdness, the bizarreness, just dipping into Hickman's mind. This is one of the things I love about storytelling. Aside from just a good plot, I want you to take me somewhere I've never been. I love imaginative stories that are just super, just out there. This one did it. That there's so many things I can say that I love about this book, and so most books only hit me like one way, like, oh, that was an interesting story, or that had a really good character, and that's great if you can do that. But if you can do great characters, great story, and imaginative worlds that just spark my sense of wonder, then more power to you. That's a rare commodity. So that's why I'm so high on this book. There is things like you said, I kind of wish there was a little bit more intensity in the climax and things like that I felt like it did fall short here and there, but things could always be better.
Yeah.
I could say things like that about even East of West, which I loved to death. But it's best not to get hung up on that. Otherwise you just rob yourself from enjoying what is there.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining us and paying attention. Hopefully you guys all read these stories as well and didn't just let us spoil. Believe me, our spoiling of this book is not nearly the enjoyment of like reading it. It probably comes off as a really dumb book just if you didn't experience it and just listening to us describe it. So hopefully you did, and hopefully if not, you will. But we're going to go to our last segment before we say goodnight to you all, and that is our picks for next week. Skip, there's some good-looking books coming out next week. Good-looking books. What do you have to say to the users to make sure that they don't miss out on New Comic Book Day?
Absolutely grabbing The Good Asian. I've been enjoying that book. Issue number 6 was a little bit of an off-kilter issue for me, but I could tell that it was a setup issue, so it wasn't bad at all. I think just coming off of issue number 5 and like how much I really enjoy the visual storytelling in it and some of the things that they do within the book and with the murder mystery and the intrigue building. A setup issue is just a little like, oh, I wanted more of what you did last time, but it was still good. So I'm going to jump on 7. Of course, the silver coin, number 7. It's Rom V. I like the setup of what the plot is. And I'm riding so high off of what Joshua Williamson did in issue number 6 that I have to like it's Rom V, a writer that I enjoy even more than Joshua Williamson. So I can't wait to see what Rom V does with a, horror, mystery, totem type of story. And Ash, I gotta say, because we kept talking about it, so I feel like it's a good place to mention it. I finally grabbed because there was 2 copies of that James Harren variant from issue number 6. I went ahead and I said, hey fellas, go ahead and put this in the saver. I'm coming back for this bad boy. So I will have a copy of that one in my possession shortly.
Nice. This is a book that keeps taunting me, tempting me. And when it first came out, I was like, it's a 5-issue miniseries, whatever. Like, and people were saying good things about it, and all the merits I heard, and I was like, heard ya, sounds great. I'm gonna just check it out when it comes in trade. And then it was so popular, and people were so liking it, and I guess the creator of the series, which is the artist, and I like the concept, by the way. For those of you who don't know anything about Silvercoin, and correct me if I get this wrong, Skip, the artist of this book is a guy who came up with a concept and then went out and found writers, solicited writers, and say, hey, do you want to, help out, like, up, and come up with stories. And it's like an anthology series in the sense that every issue is kind of self-contained. So you don't have to, it's not a, what do you call it? A serialized story. It's episodic. And so it's like Twilight Zone. You can just come in and write an episode and do your thing, and the artist stays the same, but there's an overlying, just like Twilight Zone, there's an overlying theme that connects them, and that here's like the silver coin, which is sort of the anchor piece to these horror stories that are created. And so it means you could literally jump in at any time. It's not like, oh, you had to find out what happened last episode. It's not. It's different. And you get all these different writers coming in, for better or for worse, but mostly for the better. The talent that he's getting are all my favorite writers. I think there was like one book where I was like, oh, I'm not really a fan of that person. But the last one, Joshua Williamson, big fan. And I was like, that was the first book that was like, oh, hey, we're continuing the series. It's not a miniseries anymore.
Yeah.
And I love when things like that happen, where it's like, we thought we were going to do a miniseries, but it's so popular, we're going to continue it. And now I'm like, ooh, maybe I should go back and collect these, because it's still pretty early in the series, and it's going to be ongoing. And then, of course, the next book is Rom V, who I'm like, dude, did you just keep pulling him out of the, if I feel like if I don't jump on, he's going to be like, oh, next issue is Frank Miller. I'm going to be like, what? I feel like that's going to happen. Like, I feel like I just need to pull the trigger. And then get this. This is a book everyone was always talking about it, and I feel like I'm just missing out. So,
So Walsh did a considerable amount of work over at Marvel. So he worked with Kelly Thompson on some of her Kate Bishop Hawkeye run. I don't know where he's worked with Joshua Williamson before, but I'm sure like being over at, Marvel, he probably did some stuff with Chip Zdarsky as well. So from what I remember, because I went back and I was kind of looking up Walsh's, bibliography, if you will, for lack of a better term. I noticed that because at first I thought the same thing too. I was like, oh wow, he just kind of like maybe he's just friends with me, because like in the industry, like you go to enough cons and you work at like over the years, you may have worked with someone like at a smaller publisher when you're trying to make it a name for yourself, and maybe you guys work again later, or you just keep that friendship going from there. So most of the people, if not all of them, I was able to track down where they had worked together before. Rom V was the main one that I had not seen that, but I could have just overlooked it, or maybe they hadn't, but same thing, just kind of became friends over time. So that's why like those first 4 writers that he did stories with, like they all had established relationships and knew each other. But I am surprised. I mean, things were, don't get me wrong, there was varying degrees of quality in that book. Surprisingly, Jeff Lemire's issue was probably my least favorite, but what was cool is like Chips was amazing. It's still my favorite issue. Second favorite is Josh Williamson's, but like everybody kind of brought a different type of horror like with it. Like Kelly Thompson's was like more of like the Jason Voorhees kind of slasher style. Chip Zdarsky's was more of like the monkey paw type style. Lemire's was more of like the technology is going to get you cyberpunk, like the corporations are gunning for the little guy type style. So everybody had a different flavor along with it being anthology and like totally different stories. So I think that's part of what kept it fresh for everyone and what got it so much so much conversations as the first arc was being published.
So kids, this is your clue. You can go and pick this up. Rom V is one of the best writers in the business, bar none. Don't take my word for it. Take Skip's. And don't take his. Go read it yourself. Read Many Deaths of Layla Starr, one of the best books in years. Rom V is amazing. And if you don't read independent books, I don't know why you're listening to the show, but apparently he does stuff over at DC that everyone loves as well. Because like I said, he's amazing. You can jump in on this book anytime. You don't need to be like, oh, I missed the free. These are all self-contained. Now, the books I want to point out are two of my favorites, Oblivion Song and Undiscovered Country. These are serialized books, so it's a little bit harder to jump in, although Image does a really great job of letting you pick up trades if you want to catch up on the story. Oblivion Song has been one of my favorites. I've been collecting it since number 1. This is the book that made me a Robert Kirkman fan, and I decided to pick it up because there was a YouTuber that I followed at the time that unfortunately stopped making videos, but he was going gaga over this book, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it out. And I liked it, and I stuck with it, and it got better and better, and then it got better, and I was like, oh, it just keeps getting better. I like what Hickman does. You know, obviously we talk about firepower. He does these long, he knows how to tell these long haul stories. And that's what got me into comics back in the day, was the old school Chris Claremont X-Men. And X-Men was like that. It was just this never ending story that I just fell in love with, that no other medium accomplished. TV, movies, even books. I mean, they made a book called Never Ending Story, which is a movie, which is near and dear to me, but it ended. It wasn't never ending. And anyways, Oblivion Song, Undiscovered Country. There's a book on here, though, Skip, that you didn't mention that I think is going to be on your poll next week. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Let's see if it's what I'm looking at right now. I like the only one that I'm looking at that is definitely on my poll from next week is actually Excellence number 12.
Well, this one, it's a new book. It's a number 1 issue. I think it's not on your radar because it's not something you would necessarily get because of the title. But I know your boy is doing this book. We talked about this a little bit before. It's Cowboy Bebop number 1, written by Dan Waters.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did talk about that. Yes, I will be getting that because I'm a Dan Waters stan. Just finished up Homesick Pilots and freaking loved that damn book. So yeah, I will be grabbing the Cowboy Bebop. Now I have to say something. This is interesting. Like breaking news. I'm not a big Cowboy Bebop fan. Not that I don't like it. I just never got into it the way everyone else did. So I have a feeling that Dan Waters here might be taking me back down that road. I actually have a Cowboy Bebop like fanzine that was that Nick Dragata gave me because he did some art in like a little like fan put together thing. So if I get some serious vibes from this, I'm gonna go back through and read that, and I might restart the series and actually try to finish it this time.
Oh wow! Well, hopefully it's very good. I know it's your boy. I was like, oh, they're doing a Cowboy Bebop comic, and I looked at it and I was like, Dan Waters. Why does this name sound familiar? And then I looked over at that Batman book that recently came out that you were excited specifically because it was a Dan Waters. I was like, it's the
Dan
same
Waters
guy.
And Danny. Heck yeah!
So there you go. So there's something to look at, guys. I know there is a lot of Cowboy Bebop fans out there. But this is a book that's being written by a real talent, not just some schlub that they're like, here, you want to write a Cowboy Bebop? But like, so this might perk your interest up. And for those of you out there that think, because I'm that way. When I look at what do you call it? Like licensed books. I'm just like, I want the best writers are going to be actually writing the real thing, not the licensed comic book. There's some rare cases like Blade Runner where that was different. So I'm hoping Cowboy Bebop is like another Blade Runner. So
Hope so.
Anything else? I know some people really like the Knighted book that's coming out next week.
I enjoyed issue number 1 more than I thought I would. I really just got it to support the homie Brian Reber, but the art did do it for me, and the story went over with me better than it did, and it left off at a more place because I was like, all right, yeah, like, you know, okay, this guy's got to take on the mantle and da 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 da. But the way that it happened ended up being more interesting than I assumed. So I put it on. I pulled it. Actually, yeah. After reading number 1, I went ahead and I put it on my pull list.
All right. Well, Frontiersman is something I've been waiting to hear about. Like, there's something that's gnawing me about that book. Like, I'm just like, I feel like that's a book I need to try. But I'm not sure. So if anyone has read that book, reach out to me. Whether or not it's something I should pay attention to. But that comes out next week. New Red Room starts next week for those of you who are Ed Piskor fans or just Ultraviolence fans or both. If you like your comics underground, grungy, and violent, Red Room is everything you've ever wanted. There's another Odin's Eye book for you bad idea fans. If you can find it, good luck. I'm not seeing any more things that are on my personal recommendation list here.
I randomly grab Love and Rockets books as they come out, so I may or may not get that one. I do have Laura by Guillaume March on my pull list. Ben and I were talking about that, especially after how I really enjoyed his work on that Carmen series. I grabbed Laura number 1 and enjoyed that, so I'm going to take the ride with Guillaume March as well. So I'll be grabbing that one.
Now, is that a new series or is it a reprint?
So that's the odd thing, because you know how it kind of be with some of those writers that are over from Europe, like like sometimes it's the first time they're publishing it over here. So like Carmen had already come out, but it was just now being published over here in floppy. So I'm not sure if that's the same case with Laura. I have a feeling that it is. I just can't confirm.
No, I'm sorry. I was actually referring to Love and Rockets.
Oh, Love and Rockets. No, they're continuing. They're still writing it.
That's
they'll just like do like a new volume or whatever. But no, they're still like the Hernandez brothers are still writing Love and Rockets issues.
Wow, Love and Rockets is like the original. What we think of like Image Comics today. Love and Rockets was the original kind of like alt culture type book. I remember that coming out in the 90s, and yeah, people that were looking for that sort of thing, that was like their jam because they didn't have a million titles to choose from. It's crazy to think that that's like 30 years old, probably at least. Love and Rockets now.
Yeah, I think it's close to 30, and all of them like still do like different comics. I mean, you know, even like Teenie Howard, her Assassinista's book, like one of the Hernandez brothers drew it. Like I randomly will go and just like look up things that they're doing, and yeah, they're still, especially like if it's through Fantagraphics, like they continue to do the Love and Rockets books together as a family, and they'll like randomly draw like a series with another writer.
Very good. All right, well, I think that wraps up our show for this evening. Skip, thank you once again for sharing this experience. Decorum would not have been the same not being able to. I probably would never have read it if it weren't for you to begin with. But it would not have been as enjoyable just reading it by myself and not being able to talk with you as well as everyone else. I don't know. Let's see. We doing a show next week? Do you know yet?
I'm not entirely sure yet, but we should look at yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, because obviously We can cover Firepower if we want to. That's the last,
Oh,
for 6 months. So we have the option for that. But if you get froggy enough and decide to leap on that silver coin, and you like the lily pad that you landed on,
Oh,
maybe we're talking about that next week too. No,
maybe. We definitely got to cover Firepower, especially if it's going on hiatus, which I didn't know about. But I guess now I do. Knowing's half the battle.
it is.
So look forward to that. Hopefully Skip will be able to make it, and we'll do another episode on Wednesday. If not, it'll be the following Wednesday. But we try to do a show most Wednesdays. We'll put it that way. And also, don't forget, last Wednesdays of every month, we are dedicated towards our spinoff show, which is Criminal Cast, and we will be covering Friday, which is available in trade at your local shop now. You can also buy it digital only release that did not release floppies of that book, and you can get it at what's it called? Panelsyndicate.com. It's a website owned by the artist who does a similar thing, the silver coin thing. He finds writers to write books with. He collaborates with great people like Brian K. Vaughan, Ed Brubaker. Anyways, you can name your own price. You buy the books there. It's pay what you want. So you're never paying more than you want. Put it that way. That sounds like a deal to me. I will see you then. Hopefully you guys are reading all good books. As usual, if you have a great comic book that you're reading and you think not enough people know, share it. Tell people about it. Promote it. These books, this is kind of why we do the show. We want to geek out. We want to, share our enthusiasm, hope that it rubs off a little bit on you. It may not always work, not everyone loved Decorum as much as we did, but hopefully at least get you to try. And maybe you do come across your next book. Most of my favorite books are books that people encouraged me to try out, and sure enough, now I love them. And comics is a hobby I think that is best enjoyed together with friends and fellow fans, and sharing that enthusiasm. So hashtag read good comics. Look for us again most Wednesdays. Skip, I'll let you say the final whatever you want to say in the good night.
Thanks so much for joining us, y'all. We appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who's in the chat, everyone who's watching after the fact. Thank you for your comments, and all the listeners. We appreciate that as well. Thanks for coming out. God bless you. Good night.